All right, there we go. Make sure stream is going. Okay. Still giving me a problem on Kick here. Are live on Twitch. Good there. Live on YouTube. And Kick struggling. Oh no, here we go. Now, we need to make sure we get the chats all set up. Activate. Activate. Find and activate. Check, check, check. Just do the quick. Sure that they all show up. 1, 2, 3. All right. We are good. Pause them. Okay, so today I'm going to be watching some videos about the American political system, and we'll do some comparing and contrasting to the Canadian system learned about before. I'm going to make sure change this time. Save all. Should change all. Force kick sounds when I do this. Okay, that is working. Perfect. 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 Just loop my headset. Right, we're good. Let's get to it. So I got a couple videos up. We're gonna learn the basics about the system, maybe go a little bit more in depth, um, and see how it compares. Let's go.
The United States government is structured around three main branches: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. This design, rooted in the Constitution, ensures a system of checks and balances, preventing any one branch from gaining too much power. First, we have the legislative branch, which is primarily responsible for making laws. This branch is bicameral, consisting of two chambers: the Senate, with 100 senators, and the House of Representatives, which has 435 members. Together, they debate and pass legislation, control federal spending, and have the power to declare war. Next is the executive branch, headed by the president. This branch is tasked with enforcing laws and administering the government. It includes the vice president, the cabinet, and numerous federal agencies. The cabinet consists of 15 departments, such as the Department of Defense.
Cabinet department. So it never broke it down like this when we looked at the Canadian system. But education, defense, finance is financing here. Commerce. Zoom.
and the Department of Education, each overseeing specific areas of public policy.
Maybe Treasury.
Finally, we have the judicial branch, which interprets laws and ensures they comply with the Constitution. At its core is the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, along with lower federal courts. The judiciary has the power to review laws and executive actions, ensuring that they align with
All right, I have a double audio again. I guess kick. All right, I have a double audio. Yep. There we go.
constitutional principles. Together, these branches work in concert to uphold democracy, protect individual rights, and maintain the rule of law in the United States. The executive branch is the most visible and powerful branch of the U.S. government, led by the president. As commander-in-chief of the armed forces, the president serves as the nation's top military leader, with the authority to deploy troops and wage war. But the president's role extends far beyond the battlefield. As chief executive, the president is responsible for enforcing and administering the law. Think of the president as the CEO of the federal government, overseeing a vast bureaucracy of agencies and departments. At the heart of this bureaucracy lies the cabinet, a group of advisors consisting of the vice president and the heads of 15 executive departments.
So these are all chosen by the president. Correct?
Such as the Department of State, Department of Defense, and Department
Like he picks the or the president picks the leaders of each of these departments.
of Education. The State Department, for example, is responsible for conducting foreign policy and protecting American interests abroad. Led by the Secretary of State, this department negotiates treaties, appoints ambassadors, and gathers intelligence to inform the president's decisions. Meanwhile, the Defense Department, under the leadership of the Secretary of Defense, is tasked with
Secretary of War now.
maintaining a strong military, capable of defending the nation against threats both foreign and domestic. But the executive branch is more than just the president and cabinet. It also includes a wide array of independent agencies, each with its own specific mission and area of expertise.
Okay, I'm just gonna close the Twitch one. The kick one I have open here.
Environmental
There we go.
Protection Agency, EPA, for instance. Established in 1970, the EPA is charged with protecting human health and the environment by enforcing laws like the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. Led by an administrator appointed by the president, the EPA operates independently of the cabinet, allowing it to make decisions based on scientific evidence rather than political considerations. Another notable independent agency is NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Founded in 1958, NASA is responsible for the nation's civilian space program, conducting research.
Weren't they just talking about building a moon base? That's the latest news I've heard out of NASA, at least.
An exploration that pushes the boundaries of human knowledge. From sending astronauts to the moon to launching powerful telescopes that peer into the depths of the cosmos, NASA's achievements have inspired generations of Americans and reminded us of the boundless potential of human ingenuity. And then there's the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency. As the nation's premier intelligence agency, the CIA gathers and analyzes information from around the world to help policymakers make informed decisions. Operating under the Director of National Intelligence, the CIA employs a vast network of spies, analysts, and support staff to monitor threats, track down terrorists, and
The CIA is an independent agency of the government.
provide early warning of potential crises. So while the president may be the most visible member
Legislative, executive, judicial.
of the
Okay.
executive branch, he or she is just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface lies a vast and complex network of agencies and departments, each working to fulfill its unique mission and serve the American people. It's a system that may seem daunting at first glance, but one that has proven remarkably resilient and effective in meeting the challenges of a rapidly changing world. The legislative branch, embodied by the United States Congress, is the heart of American democracy. This bicameral institution, consisting of the Senate and the House of Representatives, is responsible for drafting, debating, and passing the laws that govern our nation. At the core of Congress lies the Senate, a body of 100 members, 2 from each state, who serve 6-year terms. The Senate is often referred to as the upper chamber due to its more exclusive membership and longer terms. Senators are tasked with advising the president on treaties and confirming presidential appointments, from Supreme Court justices to cabinet members. They also have the sole power to try impeachment cases, serving as a check on the executive branch. The House of Representatives, on the other hand,
So the Senate, if it's 2 from each state, that means that the larger states have a lower per capita representation. The less populous states have a larger per capita representation in the Senate. Okay.
is the lower chamber, with 435 members elected every 2 years from districts across the country. The number of representatives per state is based.
So when they talk about midterm, are they re-electing the House of Representatives? When the US talks about midterms, do they re-elect the House of Representatives? Ooh, answer fast. Yes. When Americans talk about midterms, they're referring to the elections where all 435 members of the US House of Representatives are up for election and thus potentially re-elected by voters. Okay. Every representative serves a 2-year term. Because of this short term, the entire House must stand for election every even number year. What re-elect means here, incumbent representatives. Comparison with the senators. Senators serve 6-year terms, which are staggered into 3 classes. In any midterm or presidential year, only about 1/3 of Senate seats, usually 33 or 34, are up for election. Oh, so the Senate is staggered. So every 2 years they change 1/3 of the senators. Okay. That's why midterms are often described as all of the House plus roughly 1/3 of the Senate. Okay. Why midterms matter more for the House? Midterm elections are seen as a referendum on the sitting president's performance because the president can only be changed every 4 years. Historically, the president's party tended to lose seats in the House during midterms. Average loss of about 26 seats since World War II. Control of the House determines who sets the legislative agenda, controls committees, and can block or advance the president's priorities. Okay, so the entire House of Representatives gets elected every 2 years, which means there can be massive shifts. All right. So then, during a presidential year, the party that gets the most votes gets to put forward the president. How is the president in the United States selected? We'll read that.
Based on population, ensuring that the most populous states have the greatest voice. The House.
Okay, so the House of Representatives is more of a per capita, like the amount of seats you get is determined by the population of your state. All right.
House is responsible for initiating revenue bills and impeaching federal officials, and its members are closer to the people, with shorter terms and more frequent elections. But Congress is more than just the sum of its parts. It is a complex web of committees and subcommittees, each specializing.
So we read about this for the in Canada too. Committees and subcommittees are essentially groups of members from the House of Representatives uh, put forward to like solve a specific problem or debate a specific topic, essentially to go more in depth on a specific topic, so that they can then present that to the House of Representatives as a whole and make a more informed decision on the laws.
In a particular area of policy. These committees are the workhorses of Congress, conducting hearings, gathering evidence, and drafting legislation. From the powerful Appropriations Committee, which controls federal spending, to the Judiciary Committee, which oversees the courts and law enforcement, each committee plays a vital role in shaping the laws of the land. Two key legislative agencies that support the work of Congress are the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, and the Government Accountability Office, GAO. The CBO provides nonpartisan analysis of the budget and economic issues, helping lawmakers make informed decisions about spending and taxation. The GAO, on the other hand, is the investigative arm of Congress, auditing government agencies and programs to ensure accountability and efficiency. So while the president may be the face of the executive branch, it is Congress that holds the real power of the purse and the pen. From the halls of the Capitol to the committee rooms and legislative agencies, the legislative branch is the engine that drives the machinery of government, ensuring that the will of the people is reflected in the laws of the land. The judicial branch, anchored by the Supreme Court, serves as the guardian of the Constitution and the final arbiter of the law. This branch is tasked with interpreting the meaning of laws, applying them to specific cases, and ensuring that they do not conflict with the higher authority of the Constitution. The federal court system is a three-tiered pyramid with the Supreme Court at the apex. At the base are the district courts, where federal cases are first heard.
Supreme Court, Courts of Appeal, 13 of them, and then District Courts, 94.
There are 94 district courts across the country, each with its own jurisdiction. If a party is unsatisfied with the district court's ruling, they can appeal to one of the 13 courts of appeals, which review the legal issues raised in the case. But it is the Supreme Court that has the final say. Composed of 9 justices, including 1 Chief Justice, the Supreme Court stands as the ultimate interpreter of the Constitution. When the court grants a writ of certiorari, it agrees to hear a case, usually because it involves an important question of federal law or a potential conflict with the Constitution. During oral arguments, the justices grill the attorneys, probing the legal reasoning behind their positions. Behind the scenes, the justices engage in vigorous debate.
So, whenever a justice leaves office, either by retiring or aging out, the current sitting president gets to put forward the next justice, from what I understand. Okay, what was I asking here? How is the president in the United States selected? The president of the United States is not elected by a direct national popular vote. I remember seeing that, because wasn't when Trump ran against Hillary, didn't Hillary have the popular vote? Trump won because it's not elected by a direct popular vote. Instead, the US uses an indirect system established by the Constitution. Voters choose electors who then formally elect the president, vice president through the Electoral College. Here's a clear step-by-step breakdown of how it works in practice today. Eligibility to run, to be president, natural born US citizen, at least 35 years old. I'm not even old enough to be the president. US. Why you gotta be 35? I've lived in the US for at least 14 years. I assume you have to be all of those. But if you've been a natural born citizen, I guess you could move away. Candidates from major parties like Democrats or Republican or third parties typically register with the Federal Election Commission and begin campaigning 1 to 2 years before Election Day. Primaries and caucuses. Each political party holds state level contests called primaries or caucuses to choose their presidential nominee. Voters in each state vote for a candidate or delegate pledges to that candidate. This process narrows the field until one candidate per major party secures enough delegates. By late spring/early summer, each party holds a national convention where they officially nominate their ticket. One president candidate plus one vice presidential running mate. General election day. This is what most people think of as election day in 2028. It'll be November 7th, 2028. Voters go to the polls and select a presidential ticket. Important, when you vote for a candidate, you're actually voting for a slate of electors pledged to that candidate in your state. Your vote contributes to the statewide tally. The Electoral College, there are 538 total electors. 435, one for each member of the House of Representatives, 100, two for each state senator, 3 for Washington, D.C. Okay, so that's the senator thing again. Or that is a state, you get 2 per state, and it's not affected by how many people are in the state. Each state number of electors, its total congressional delegation. Larger states have more. Okay, winner takes all. Like I'm saying here, large states have more. California has 54. Smaller states like Wyoming only have 3 senators plus representatives. So 2 of that is senators. So as representatives, they only have 1 population wise. So having 2 senators is provides Wyoming a lot more leverage within the government. Winner takes all in 48 states plus DC. The candidate who wins the most votes in that state gets all the state electoral votes. Exception. Maine and Nebraska split some electors by congressional district. Electors meet in their state capitals in mid-December and cast their official votes, almost always following the popular vote winner in their state, though faithless electors are rare and usually don't change outcomes. But they exist. A candidate needs a majority of 270 electoral votes to win the presidency out. Okay. States certify the results. In early January, Congress meets in a joint session to count the electoral votes. If no candidate reaches 270, a contingent election occurs. The House of Representatives chooses the president. 1 vote per seated delegation, and the Senate chooses the vice president. Oh. Yeah, that's really set up for a two-party system because 270 is half of the total votes, right? Or near. $538. See. Yeah, you need to pass the halfway mark. And so if there was like a third party in the US, that would be almost impossible. So you'd always be falling back on this other system. The House of Representatives chooses the president. The Senate chooses the vice president. I wonder how many times that's happened. The winner is inaugurated on January 20th of the following year. The system was designed by the founders as a compromise that balances power between large and small states through the Senate, right? It prevents direct mob rule while still giving the people influence through the popular vote in each state. The process emphasizes state by state competition rather than a single nationwide tally. Okay. Well, let's go back to it.
often exchanging draft opinions as they strive to reach a consensus. When the court issues its ruling, it becomes the law of the land, binding on all lower courts. The Supreme Court's interpretations can have far reaching consequences, shaping everything from civil rights to economic policy. In cases like Brown versus Board of Education, which struck down racial segregation in public schools, or Obergefell versus Hodges, which legalized same sex marriage nationwide, the court has played a pivotal role in advancing social justice and protecting individual liberties. But the judicial branch is more than just the Supreme Court. It is supported by a network of agencies, such as the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts, which provides administrative support and guidance to the federal courts. The Federal Judicial Center conducts research and offers education programs for judges and court staff, while the U.S. Sentencing Commission establishes sentencing policies for the federal criminal justice system. Together, these institutions form the backbone of the judicial branch, ensuring that the rule of law is upheld and that justice is administered fairly and impartially. From the district courts to the Supreme Court, the judicial branch serves as a vital check on the power of the other branches, protecting the rights of individuals and safeguarding the principles of democracy. State and local governments play a vital role in the lives of citizens. State governments mirror the federal structure, with executive, legislative, and judicial branches. Governors lead the executive branch, while state legislatures craft laws and state courts interpret them. Local governments, such as city councils and county boards, tackle community issues like zoning, public safety, and budgets. Local law enforcement works to maintain order and build trust. State and local governments bring governance close to the people, addressing their daily needs and concerns. Whether through state legislation or local ordinances, these governments shape the lives of individuals and communities across America. All right, my friend, we've covered a lot of ground when it comes to the US government. You may find the information a bit dense, but don't worry. We've created a handy diagram and you can download it in the description or the pinned comment. You can also download the presentation slides of this video for a closer look. Finally, if you enjoyed the information a bit dense, but don't worry.
So, the legislative branch, you have the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Senate, essentially, there's an election every 2 years where you get to replace 1/3 of the Senate and you get to replace the entirety of the House of Representatives. And that's the primary governing body. So essentially similar to the House of Commons in Canada. Committees. You have the executive branch, which is your president, And essentially the people, the president, let me check that. Cabinet. Does the president pick and choose who leads each of the cabinet? Called cabinet departments. And so every 4 years you go through the election, which is the electoral college, where the senators and the House of Representatives each have like electors that send and vote for the president based off who wins each state. And let's see. Question. No, the president does not unilaterally pick and choose who leads the 15 cabinet departments. The president has significant power to nominate, select their preferred candidate, but those choices must go through the formal Senate confirmation process under the U.S. Constitution. Vice and consent are. This is key example of check and balances in the federal executive branch. Okay. So the Senate has to confirm any of the choices he puts forward. I remember seeing that on the news. But like if you're president, assume that most senators will. I mean, you only replace 1/3 of the Senate 2 years. It's possible to have a Senate that doesn't want to confirm your candidate. But I think I remember Trump got pretty much all of his people through that he wanted. So he had a favorable Senate. Okay, that's just going to go through the process. I don't really care about that. All right. What was this one? How is power divided in the United States government? We just watched a longer version of legislative, executive, judicial. It's only a couple minutes. Let's have a look. 12 years ago.
Have you ever wondered who has the authority to make laws or punish people who break them? When we think of power in the United States, we usually think of the president, but he does not act alone. In fact, he is only one piece of the power puzzle, and for very good reason. When the American Revolution ended in 1783, the United States government was in a state of change. The Founding Fathers knew that they did not want to establish another country that was ruled by a king. So the discussions were centered on having a strong and fair national government that protected individual freedoms and did not abuse its power. When the new Constitution was adopted in 1787, the structure of the infant government of the United States called for 3 separate branches, each with their own powers, and a system of checks and balances. This would ensure that no one branch would ever become too powerful, because the other branches would always be able to check the power of the other 2. These branches work together to run the country and set guidelines for us all to live by. The legislative branch is described in Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. Many people feel that the Founding Fathers put this branch in the document first because they thought it was the most important. The legislative branch is comprised of 100 U.S. senators and 435 members in the U.S. House of Representatives. This is better known as the U.S. Congress. Making laws is a primary function of the legislative branch, but it is also responsible for approving federal judges and justices, passing the national budget, and declaring war. Each state gets 2 senators and some number of representatives depending on how many people live in that state. The executive branch is described in Article 2 of the Constitution. The leaders of this branch of government are the President and Vice President, who are responsible for enforcing the laws that Congress sets forth. The president works closely with a group of advisors known as the cabinet. These appointed helpers assist the president in making important decisions within their area of expertise, such as defense, the Treasury, and Homeland Security. The executive branch also appoints government officials, commands the armed forces, and meets with leaders of other nations. All that combined is a lot of work for a lot of people. In fact, the executive branch employs over 4 million people to get everything done.
Whoa. The executive branch. So these are all, I assume these are all the 15 different departments. Like, if you have the Department of Defense, I guess all the military is considered to be a part of the Department of Defense or Department of War, whatever they call it now.
The third branch of the U.S. government
So
is
I can see how that happened.
the judicial branch and is detailed in Article 3. This branch is comprised of all the courts in the land, from the federal district courts to the U.S. Supreme Court. These courts interpret our nation's laws and punish those who break them. The highest court, the Supreme Court, settles disputes among states, hears appeals from state and federal courts.
So the legislative branch is what can create laws, and the judicial branch is what interprets the laws.
And determines if federal laws are constitutional. There are 9 justices on the Supreme Court, and unlike any other job in our government, Supreme Court justices are appointed for life, or for as long as they want to stay. Our democracy depends on an informed citizenry, so it is our duty to know how it works and what authority each branch of government has over its citizens. Besides voting, chances are that
I mean, that's a point of failure right there. Depends on the people to know about it.
each branch of government has over its citizens. Besides voting, chances are that for as long as they want to stay. Our democracy depends on an informed citizenry, so it is our duty to know how it works and what authority each branch of government has over its citizens. Besides voting, chances are that sometime in your life you will be called upon to participate in your government, whether it is to serve on a jury, testify in court, or petition your congressperson to pass or defeat an idea for a law. By knowing the branches, who runs them, and how they work together, you can be involved, informed, and intelligent.
So, does the U.S. let me just ask this. In Canada, you have to be a member of a political party to vote for the leader of the party. How does that work in the US? The leader of the party, how does that work in the US? Like, do you have to be a signed member? Or in the United States, oh, scroll down, the back. In the United States, unlike Canada, you do not have to be a formal member of a political party to participate in choosing the leader, the presidential nominee of a major political party like the Democrats or Republicans. The process is far more open and decentralized, varying significantly by state and by the rules each party sets for its own primaries and caucuses. Key differences from Canada. In Canada, party leadership votes are typically restricted to paid-up party members who have joined the party in advance, often with a membership fee and cutoff date. In the US, the major party selects their presidential nominee through a series of state-by-state primaries and caucuses, not a single nationwide party membership vote. Participation rules are set by a mix of state laws, party decisions, and membership is usually just voter registration affiliation, which is free and easy to change in most places. Okay, that sounds like it's going to make the process of selecting a nominee far more complicated. If each state is essentially choosing how it runs its own caucuses. What was the other word for that? Primaries or caucuses. How the U.S. process works for choosing a party leader. Voter registration, primaries and caucuses. These happen from January to June. In presidential election years, voters cast ballot to help choose delegates who will support specific candidates at the party's national convention. So they have state conventions and then they have national convention. So you have your primaries, your caucuses at the state level, and you have your party national convention. The candidate who accumulates the most delegates wins the party's nomination and becomes its leader for the general election. Oh, there's different types of primaries and caucuses. Closed primaries and caucuses, open, semi-open, or semi-closed. In short, many states, independents, and even members of the opposing party can help choose a party's nominee in open systems. This is a big contrast to Canada's stricter membership requirements. So you can go, if it's an open primary caucus, you can go to a party that like you don't relate with and help choose their leader. Okay. Let's actually read these. Closed primaries and caucuses, only voters registered with that specific party can participate. Open primaries caucuses. Any registered voter can choose which party's primary to vote in on election day. You pick one. Can't vote in both. Okay. Semi-open or semi-closed. So then the candidate that wins the primary caucus, do all of them, like, do all the people you send to the national convention have to vote in that way, like in the election? National conventions delegates chosen via the primary caucus gather in the summer to formally nominate the candidate who has the majority of delegates. Nominee then selects vice president running mate and becomes the party standard bearer. Why this system exists. The U.S. approach emphasized broader voter participation and state flexibility rooted in federalism. It can lead to crossover voting, where people try to influence the other party's nominee. I mean, that makes sense. Which some criticize as diluting party control, while supporters say it makes the process more democratic and moderate. This ties back to our earlier discussion on the federal executive branch and the electoral college. The party's nominees become the candidate who then competes in the general election. Okay. All right. Let's break down the important points of that last. Historical context and purpose. After the American Revolution that ended in 1783, the Founding Fathers wanted a strong national government but feared repeating the monarchy they had just fought against. The 1787 Constitution created a system with three separate branches of government, each with its own powers, plus build in checks and balances to stop any branch from becoming too powerful. The legislative branch, this is Congress, made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Its main job is making laws, but it also approves federal judges and justices, passes the national budget, and declares war. The executive branch, led by the president and vice president, they enforce the laws Congress passes, work with the Cabinet of Advisors, appoint officials, command the armed forces, and handle foreign relations. The branch employs over 4 million people. Judicial branch includes federal courts up to the Supreme Court. They interpret laws, punish lawbreakers, settle disputes between states, hear appeals, decide whether federal laws are constitutional. The video stressed no branch acts alone. Each has tools to check the others. Congress can override a presidential veto. The president appoints judges, but the Senate must confirm them. Courts can declare laws unconstitutional. This ensures that government stays balanced and protects individual freedom. Overall message, the video ends by reminding viewers that informed citizenry is essential to democracy. Knowing who has what authority helps you understand how the system actually works in practice. Great. Let's see how this works at the state level.
Hey everyone.
What was I? Last thing I just did. Okay. We'll pull those up down there. Okay, state and federal powers in American federalism.
And welcome back. This is one of a series of videos looking at key issues and concepts in American politics. In this video, we're going to explore how power is divided between the states and the national government under the American system of federalism. In another video, we examine the division of power between the national and state governments, observing that some of the powers are expressly granted to the federal government, some are shared between the state government and the federal government, and some are reserved exclusively to the states.
Okay, we did not watch this video. Let's see. National powers. Regulate foreign and interstate commerce. Coin money, declare war, foreign affairs. State powers. Regulate intrastate commerce. Establish local governments. Administer elections. Police powers. Congruent powers, so things that kind of overlap by both. Levy taxes, borrow money, establish courts, enact and enforce law.
In this video, we'll consider the constitutional provisions that establish this division in more detail. Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution outlines the broad powers explicitly granted to the federal government. Because of this, it's sometimes referred to as the enumerated powers or the expressed powers clause. These powers include the ability to levy taxes, regulate commerce, coin money, establish post offices, declare war, and maintain a military. The enumerated powers were designed to provide the central government with sufficient authority to address national issues while maintaining a balance of power with the states. The same article also includes the provision that grants Congress the express power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. This is often referred to as the elastic clause or the implied powers clause because it grants the government powers not specifically enumerated but necessary to govern. Arguably, the most significant source of federal power today is the Commerce Clause. Found in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution, the Commerce Clause grants the Congress the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with Indian tribes. The Commerce Clause is one of the most important and far-reaching powers granted to Congress in the Constitution.
To negotiate commerce with foreign nations and among several states and with the Indian tribe. Let me hear that one again.
Found in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution, the Commerce Clause grants the Congress the power to
So Congress is the Senate and the House of Representatives. So the elected body.
regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with Indian tribes.
So Trump is a member of the executive branch. So his tariffs become law because of the Commerce Clause would have to be passed by the Senate and the House of Representatives, right? That happened? Or is this why all those tariffs were struck down and then he found another way of doing it because he needed the Senate and the House of Representatives to vote on it if he wanted to use this method to do tariffs, because that I would say negotiate commerce with foreign nations, but tariffs are like internal, no? I guess this is why there's entire departments that interpret this stuff. Because a tariff is putting a price on something that you're importing. I don't know. You can read that multiple ways. Let's just hear it one more time.
Federal power today is the Commerce Clause. Found in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution, the Commerce Clause grants the Congress the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with Indian tribes. The Commerce Clause is one of the most important and far-reaching powers granted to Congress in the Constitution, as it gives Congress the power to regulate a wide range of economic activity, including the production, distribution, and sale of goods and services. This clause has been used to support a broad range of federal regulations, from labor laws to environmental regulations to consumer protection.
Maybe I can ask ChatGPT that. Commerce Clause. Allow. How does the Commerce Clause in the U.S. Constitution, how does that affect President Trump's tariffs? The Commerce Clause, found in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, gives Congress the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among several states. This clause plays a big role in understanding why President Trump could impose tariffs, even though the Constitution gives that power to Congress, not the President. Right? Below is how the Commerce Clause interacts with presidential tariff actions, including those taken by Donald Trump. The Commerce Clause gives Congress the power over foreign commerce. Tariffs are, by nature, a form of regulation of foreign commerce. So constitutionally, the power belongs to Congress, not the President. But Congress exercises that power by passing trade laws and tariff statutes. But Congress has also passed laws delegating some of that power to the President. Okay, here we go. Congress delegated tariff powers to the President. This is the key. Congress passed multiple laws giving the presidential authority to impose tariffs under certain conditions. important delegation statutes used during Trump's presidency. Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 allows the president to impose tariffs for national security reasons. Is this why when I've watched the news, he's always talking about like security threats? Because that was an important part of allowing him to pass his tariffs. Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 allows tariffs in response to unfair foreign trade practices. I think I've heard that said a lot, such as intellectual property violations. Trump relies heavily on both. Because these powers were delegated by Congress, courts have held that the president's tariff actions are constitutional, even if controversial. So how does the Commerce Clause affect Trump's tariffs? Congress has the constitutional power. Congress delegated parts of that power to the president. Courts said the delegation is broad but allowed. Weren't some of them struck down? Congress controls trade, but Congress... Okay, the Commerce Clause means Congress controls trade, but Congress choose to give the president large discretion. Trump used these delegated powers to impose tariffs without needing congressional approval. I've heard about certain tariffs that were struck down. How does this play into the situation? Some of President Trump's tariffs were upheld, but a few specific ones were struck down or partially invalidated. Because I remember hearing on the news that like there was some people were saying that there might be like a big payback of tariffs that were not upheld. Well, I don't know what's happening with that right now. When courts strike down a tariff, it usually means the president exceeded the authority Congress delegated, or the administration failed to follow required procedures. Okay, when courts strike down tariffs, it's not because of the Commerce Clause directly. The Commerce Clause gives Congress powers over foreign commerce, not the president. So when courts review presidential tariff action, they do not ask, does the Commerce Clause stop the president from doing this? Instead, they ask, did Congress delegate this power, and did the president stay within what Congress allowed? So strike downs happen under statutory law, not the Constitution. Okay, here we go. Why some Trump tariffs were struck down. The key reason? The president went beyond what Congress actually authorized in the trade statutes. Here are the notable examples. Okay, I don't want to get too into the sections and actual what this means in relation to the Commerce Clause. I don't really care about that. Okay. Great. Get back to it.
Over time, the interpretation of the Commerce Clause has expanded to cover not just interstate commerce, but also activities that have substantial effects on interstate commerce, even if they do not involve crossing state lines. This has led to some controversy and criticism, as some argue that the Commerce Clause has been used to expand the powers of the federal government beyond what the founders originally intended, a debate we examine in more detail in another video. Article 4, Clause 2 of the Constitution provides that this Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. This is often referred to as the Supremacy Clause. It's intended to ensure that federal law takes precedence over conflicting state laws, emphasizing the authority of the federal government.
Okay. Let me hear that one again.
Clause 2 of the
Supremacy
Constitution provides that
clause.
this Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. This is often referred to as the Supremacy Clause. It's intended to ensure that federal law takes precedence over conflicting state laws.
So, the federal law, what is passed the federal level, it takes precedent over state law. I mean, that makes sense. What happens when you get contradictions? And then you have to go by the federal law. Okay. So I think we've been seeing some of this play out in the US recently. But the federal law reigns supreme.
Emphasizing the authority of the federal government. The 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution attempts to balance the power of the federal government against those of the states. It provides that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. This is often referred to as the Reserved Powers Clause because it provides that the national government only has those powers explicitly granted to it by the Constitution, and that any powers not granted to the federal government are the purview of the states. This means that states have significant power to govern themselves and to make their own laws as long as those laws do not conflict with the Constitution or with federal law. The 10th Amendment ensures the federal government does
Oh, I'm trying to keep this one up here. Watching this. When has the state's laws and federal law come in opposition recently? Laws. Usually, here are recent high-profile situations where state laws and federal laws directly clashed, leading to lawsuits, injunctions, and Supreme Court attention. Immigration enforcement. Texas versus the federal government. Texas passed SB 4, allowing state police to arrest migrants for illegal entry, ordered them to leave the U.S. Conflict. Immigration enforcement is traditionally federal, not state. The federal government sued Texas, arguing the state law interferes with federal immigration powers. Status. Federal courts have issued multiple injunctions. The issue is still being litigated. Why this matters? It tests whether a state can run its own immigration system, something normally preempted by federal authority. Okay, I remember hearing about that one. And so it's actually the federal government suing the state government because they're using police to affect their immigration laws, allowing state police to arrest migrants for illegal entry. And so this is something that's probably going to go to the Supreme Court at some point, right? And they'll make a ruling that'll determine whether states can set up, whether state police can arrest migrants. for legal entry. Okay. Abortion restrictions after Dobbs, states versus federal protections for medical emergencies. After Dobbs versus Jackson, many states created strict abortion bans. But federal law, EMTALA, requires hospitals to provide emergency stabilizing treatment, including abortion when necessary to save the mother's life. Conflict. Some states argue that EMTALA does not override their abortion bans. The federal government argued it must apply even in banned states. A major case involved Idaho, where federal courts ruled parties in favor of the Biden administration in emergencies, while the Supreme Court temporarily allowed Idaho to enforce parts of its ban while litigation continues. So this is the abortion debate in the U.S. Federal law requires hospitals to provide emergency stabilizing treatment, including abortions, when necessary to save the mother's life. State laws are trying to be passed where there's no abortions. And so that's where the conflict comes in. Oh, marijuana laws. State legalizing versus federal prohibition. Many states, including California, have legalized recreational marijuana. Conflict. Federal law still classifies marijuana as illegal nationwide. Practical result, the federal government has mostly chosen not to enforce federal law against state legal businesses, but the conflict still exists legally, affecting banking, taxes, and interstate commerce. Yeah, I heard that in the U.S. in some places, a dispensary for marijuana still has to use like cash to pay taxes because they can't use the banking system because it's against federal law. So that's something that still hasn't been ironed out. Okay, gun regulations, state restrictions versus federal constitutional protections. Several states passed strict gun regulations that federal courts have struck down after Supreme Court 2022 Bruin decision. Okay, conflict. Federal courts have ruled that some state laws violate the Second Amendment, which functions as a federal constitutional limit on states' authority. I think that these conflicts have been going on for a long time. Okay. What else? How many examples do we got here? Environmental and climate rules, states resisting federal energy policies. Some states challenged federal climate rules issued by the EPA. Notable states versus EPA over power plant emissions regulations. The conflict, states claim federal agencies overreach. The federal government argues the rules fall under national environmental statutes. Okay, state social media laws versus federal protection. States like Florida and Texas passed laws restricting how social media companies can moderate content. Conflict. Courts have found portions of these laws clash with federal protections for online platforms, the First Amendment. These cases are now before the U.S. Supreme Court, making this one of the most important modern federal state conflicts. can you give a short description of each of the amendments in the U.S. Constitution? That's where they're from, right? Oh, okay. This isn't too much. Here we go. Bill of Rights, 1 to 10. Freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition. Number 2, right to keep and bear arms. 3, no quartering of soldiers in private homes. Okay. That one seems like it's out of nowhere. Number 4, protection against unreasonable search and seizures. Number 5, rights in criminal cases. Things like due process, no double jeopardy, no self-incrimination, compensation for taken property. Number 6, fair trial rights. Things like speedy trial, speedy-ish, impartial jury, attorney, a confrontation of witnesses. Okay. Number 7, right to jury trial in civil cases. Number 8, no excessive bail or fines, no cruel and unusual punishment. 9, rights not listed are still retained by the people. Number 10, powers not given to the federal government are reserved to the states or the people. Okay, there's 27 total. Bill of Rights, and these are amendments, so things that are added later on. 11, limits lawsuits against states. 12, revises presidential / vice presidential election procedures. 13, abolishes slavery and involuntary servitude. 14, defines citizenship, guarantees equal protections and due process, applies rights to the states. 15, prohibits denial of voting rights based on race. 16, allows federal income tax. 17, direct elections of U.S. senators. 18, prohibition of alcohol, later repealed. 19, women's suffrage, women gained the right to vote. So they prohibited denial of voting rights based on race before women gained the right to vote. Okay. Changes start dates of presidential and congressional terms. 21, repeals prohibition, repeals the 18th Amendment. 22, limits the president to 2 terms. So that was an original part of it. That's something that's been amended in later. 23, grants Washington, D.C. electoral votes for president. 24, bans poll taxes in federal election. Is that a thing? Like, you had to pay a tax to vote? I mean, that's an interesting concept. And at 24, okay. 25, presidential succession and procedures for when the president is incapacitated. 26, lowers the voting age to 18. What was it before? 27, changes to congressional salaries take effect only after the next election. Okay. Seems interesting. Let's keep going.
has not become too powerful, and that the states have a degree of autonomy to address the needs of their citizens. The 10th Amendment has been used by many courts to limit the power of the federal government and to protect the rights of states. It's also been used to protect individual rights and limit the power both of the federal and state governments. The Full Faith and Credit Clause is a provision of the U.S. Constitution that requires each state to honor the laws, public records, and court decisions of the other states. It's found in Article 4, Section 1 of the Constitution, and states that full faith and credit shall be given in each state to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state. The purpose of the Full Faith and Credit Clause is to promote unity and smooth transactions between the states by ensuring that legal judgments and documents issued in one state are recognized and enforced in all other states. This means that if a legal judgment is made in one state, it will be recognized and enforced in another state, even if the laws of that state differ. The Full Faith and Credit Clause has been applied in many different contexts, such as marriage and divorce laws, child custody disputes, and property rights. For example, if a couple is married in one state, that marriage is recognized as valid in all other states, even if the laws regarding marriage are different. Similarly, if a person is granted a driver's license in one state, that license is recognized as valid in all other states. The Full Faith and Credit Clause has been the subject of some controversy and interpretation over the years, particularly in cases where there are conflicts between laws of different states. We explore some of these issues in another video. Article 6, Section 2 of the Constitution is the counterpart to the Full Faith and Credit Clause. It provides that the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. This prevents states from discriminating against citizens of other states by denying them certain fundamental rights and privileges. It provides for the free movement of people and goods across state lines by ensuring that the citizens of one state are not treated unfairly or differently from the citizens of another state. This clause applies to a wide range of fundamental rights and privileges, such as the right to travel, the right to engage in commerce, the right to enter into contracts, and the right to receive equal protection under the law. While the Privileges and Immunities Clause is an important protection for the rights of citizens, it's not an absolute guarantee of equal treatment. The Supreme Court has recognized that states may sometimes have legitimate reasons for treating non-residents differently, such as when it comes to the regulation of natural resources or the provision of public benefits. As with the issues arising from the Full Faith and Credit Clause, we'll explore some of the issues arising from the Privileges and Immunity Clause in another video. And although not part of the original Constitution and the Bill of Rights, the 11th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is also important to understand American federalism. Ratified in 1795, the 11th Amendment provides that the judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or persecuted against one of the United States by the citizens of another state or by the citizens or subjects of any foreign state. This is more commonly referred to as the doctrine of sovereign immunity. The 11th Amendment has been interpreted by the Supreme Court to mean that states cannot be sued by individuals in federal court without their consent, except in certain limited circumstances. This means that individuals cannot generally sue states for damages or legal remedies in a federal court. The concept of sovereign immunity is based on the idea that the government needs to be protected from the burden of excess litigation and that it should be immune to lawsuits that might interfere with the ability to perform its functions.
The 11th limits lawsuits against states.
However, sovereign immunity can also limit the ability of individuals to seek redress for grievances against the government, which has led to some criticism of the doctrine. Finally, the system of federalism outlined in the Constitution also imposes a number of limitations on the power of both the state and the national governments. For example, Congress cannot suspend the right to a writ of habeas corpus, that is, the right of a person to appear before a judge after being arrested and to challenge the legality of their detention. This right is enshrined in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. Congress is also not permitted to pass bills of attainder, or laws that single out an individual or group for punishment without trial. The Constitution explicitly prohibits the federal government and the states from passing bills of attainder in Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3. Nor may Congress pass ex post facto laws, or laws that retroactively criminalize conduct that was legal when it occurred, or increases the punishment for conduct that was legal when it occurred. The U.S. Constitution explicitly prohibits the federal.
So you can't make a law that makes something illegal, then go back and punish people for that. That makes sense.
Government and the states from passing ex post facto law.
It does mean your laws have got to be like keeping pace with modern, because there's a lot of like financial things that eventually become illegal, but you can't go back and punish people who have done it in the past because of the ex post facto laws.
Laws in Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3. And finally, the Constitution also limits the power of Congress to address the question of slavery, including prohibiting the government from preventing the importation of enslaved persons for 20 years and requiring free states to return escaped slaves under the Fugitive Slave Clause, Article 4, Section 2. But that's it for now. Please leave any questions you have in the comment section.
Okay, that was the second one. Let's see. Breakdown of important points in the videos. Core idea of federalism. The Constitution creates dual sovereignty. Sovereigns. The federal government is supreme in its areas, but states retain significant independent power. This was a deliberate design to balance national unity with local control. Enumerated delegated powers. These are powers explicitly given to the federal government, such as regulating interstate commerce, coining money, declaring war, and maintaining a military. Elastic clause allows Congress to pass laws needed to carry out the enumerated powers. This has been used to expand federal authority over time. It's just going through all the things we just learned. What I wanted to know, what authorities are handled by the federal government, the state government, and the local government in the US? It'll understand. Where are we here? Supremacy clause. Federal law is the supreme law of the land. If there's a conflict, federal law wins. 10th Amendment, all powers not given to the federal government nor prohibited to the states are reserved to the states or the people. This is the foundation for states' powers like education, law enforcement, interstate commerce, marriage/family law, and most criminal law. Okay, concurrent powers, powers shared by both levels, taxation, borrowing money, building roads, establishing courts. Okay. Let's see how the powers break down. Here's a clear breakdown of the federal, state, and local governments handled in the United States based on the Constitution and modern practices. The federal government, major federal powers, national defense and the military, foreign policy and treaties, immigration and citizenship, intrastate and international commerce, commerce and printing money, federal taxation and spending, Social Security, Medicaid, and other national programs, environmental regulation, national standards, civil rights protections, federal law enforcement, the FBI, DEA, postal system. Okay, what does the state government handle? Their powers, the education system, schools, curriculum standards. So this has already been. Wasn't there a thing where Trump got rid of the federal education system gave it back to the states? Is this something that's recently moved, or is this more broadly always here? Other things that the state government does is state law enforcement and state courts, public health and safety, public hospitals, health rules, marriage, divorce, and family law, property law and contracts, state roads and transportation, professional licensing, teachers, doctors, lawyers, elections and voting procedures, alcohol regulations, most criminal law, state taxes. Okay, let's look at the local governments. Country, city, towns, special districts. Their major local powers are police, fire department, emergency services, local schools and school districts, zoning and land use, local roads, streets and public transit, water, sewage, garbage collection, public parks and recreation. Local ordinances, noise rules, curfews, pet laws, local business permits, property taxes. Okay, and there's a lot of shared or overlapping powers, such as law enforcement, healthcare, transportation, environment, disaster response, workplace regulation. Okay, well, we're going to learn a bit more about the local governments next. And how that system works. Make sure everything's going well on the stream. Yep. Not going to open Kick again, because that's always the dual audio issue. All right, we are looking at local level. Now, one thing I liked about going through this in Canada that I could use my address and find like my local representatives. So let's go Google Maps. And we'll find somewhere, because the representatives, they're all public figures, right? So let's just find a place in the US and we'll see the representatives, and we'll figure out how to find and look at them. Somewhere in California. Bakersfield. Let's just pull address. Boom. All right, now when we get representatives, we're going to look at them there. Here we go.
Again, friends, and welcome. I am Caroline. You know, everyone knows about the presidential elections. They're such big news. But have you ever noticed those signs during election season with all those other names on them? You know what I'm talking about? People's yards filled with tons of signs that have so many other people's names besides their presidential candidate of choice. Many of these signs are there to bolster local representatives and local politicians. And while the movement to shop local has grown so big, the movement to focus on local politics still lags behind. And that's a shame because, as we will see in today's lesson, local politics often does more to affect the everyday lives of citizens than politics up at the top. After this lesson, you should be able to discuss the key principles and structure of county government as well as municipal governments.
Difference between county and municipal. I guess she'll probably go into that. MIA prep.
Well, folks, we've worked our way all the way down from Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., down to the governor's mansion at the state level, and today we knock on the doors of City Hall. Let's begin our exploration of local government.
The county.
The county.
Whoa.
If you live in America, you live in a county. Counties are the largest geographical and governmentally designated areas that exist within states. Excuse me, not all states have counties, actually. Alaska does not have any counties, for example. In Louisiana, counties are called parishes, and in Alaska, they are called boroughs.
So they have different names. Like, I think I live in a district, not a county.
Fancy that. So why do we have these things called counties? Well, the
In
short answer is
Canada.
this. States created counties in order to better serve citizens. You must remember, America in its early days was a vast frontier where there were a lot more trees than people. These large distances made it difficult for folks to travel to their state centers of government, and even further away were the bigger centers of government, most of which were located along the eastern seaboard. So, counties were set up with administrative centers to help facilitate these needs of citizens. Once established, a county could administer and adjudicate state law, as well as create local rules and regulations. The county is responsible also for establishing rule of law, a key principle at the local level. But the law must be accessible in order to adhere to the principle of equality and justice. County governments are, like the rest of the American government, run on the principle of popular sovereignty, which means that the people have the rights to determine who their representatives and county officials are. And that's what you're seeing with all those different signs in your neighbor's yard. Typically, each county has a county seat. A county seat is basically like the capital of the county. In the county seat, you will find all the administrative institutions that make up the county's government. Most counties have something called a county board. The name for these groups isn't always county board, but the group functions pretty much the same across the board despite differences in name. The board is a group of people charged by the state to legislate over specific areas. These areas include taxes, zoning, and the county budget. The county budget determines services provided, which is crucial for areas to operate efficiently. Word alert! Zoning, or zoning codes, determine what type of development can occur in an area. Now, county boards may have even more lofty executive duties over specific county commissions in such areas as agriculture, transportation, and election. You may see names on those yard signs for these boards because county boards are elected through popular vote.
So you elect the leader of the county, but you also elect a board? Do you have like multiple things you vote for in a county election?
Most counties have a number of lower positions as well. These are hired positions and are there in order to assist the administration of government. These people are the professional bureaucrats. In some counties, these non-elected officials can actually have quite a bit of power. For instance, some counties hire county managers that have important executive duties. Time to show what you know. Grab a pen and paper and let's do this thing. What key principles inform the structure of county government? Explain the structure of county government. How is the county judicial branch structured? What officials are elected?
Municipality.
Everybody loves a hometown hero. But what makes a town, or a city a city? Well, for starters, a community must first apply for an incorporation. Word alert! Incorporation is the process by which a group of people requests to become a municipality. A municipality refers to a city or town. Requirements for incorporation differ from state to state, but there is typically a minimum amount of population required, as well as a number of petitions. Sometimes a special election is held to determine if the people in the area want to become incorporated. If the incorporation is granted, then the state issues a charter.
So we just asked that. What's the difference between a municipality and a county? We moved on to municipalities real quick. A municipality and a county are both types of local government in the United States, but they serve different purposes and operate at different levels. Counties, larger regional governments within the state. Los Angeles County. A county is a subdivision of the state that covers a large geographic area and provides regional services. Okay, municipality, smaller community level governments within a county. It's the cities, towns, villages. All right, well, I think of cities. I think of something like New York, and that's not a smaller form, but if you look at it as town and villages, okay. Smaller community level governments within a county. Cities like Miami, towns like Gilbert, villages. Okay, what a municipality is? A municipality is a local government formed by the residents of a specific community. It is incorporated under state law and governed by a town slash city slash town, council, and a mayor or manager. Typical municipal responsibilities: local police, local street traffic control, water, sewage, trash collection, zoning and building rules. Okay. Cool. So it's a smaller level of government yet. You got counties and then you got municipalities.
Word alert! A charter is like a constitution. It delegates to a municipality certain powers as well as responsibilities, so cities are based on social contract theory. In the past, states would grant very specific and unique charters to each municipality. The type of charter each municipality receives is based on population size, which reminds you of what principle? Republicanism. I know that's what you were thinking. And the larger the municipality is, the more authority it has. And this authority ends up in a municipal government. These government structures vary across the U.S. in their sizes and structures. There are large cities like New York City that have many districts within their municipality. There are mid-sized cities such as Charlotte, North Carolina. There are small cities that usually end up as the county seats of their counties. And then there are small towns. One phenomenon that has occurred over time is something called urban sprawl. You see, urban sprawl refers to the fact that urban areas tend to expand over time. What happens when the city starts sprawling out toward the rural areas and small towns that surround it? You get referendums, and eventually, annexation. Word alert! A referendum is a special election in which people vote directly on an issue. Annexation is the process in which a city incorporates areas surrounding it. In these scenarios, smaller towns remain separate from the city. However, these small towns can grow in population over time and become almost indistinguishable from the city. Examples of this happening can be seen in the Great Philadelphia area and also the Research Triangle area of North Carolina. What happens is that rural areas outside of a city slowly become suburban areas. Other times they become cities unto themselves, like in the case of the Silicon Valley area of California, an area outside of the city of San Francisco. As we have covered before, there are different forms of government across the cities and towns of America. For an in-depth look at the different ways city governments are structured, take a look at the PDF. Let's check to see what you picked up there. Grab a pen and paper and let's do this.
I think I'm good. Do they go into a conclusion? Ooh, they do have a recap.
Recap. Popular sovereignty, rule of law, and separation of powers are all key principles that help to create local government as the place where democracy happens in America. Local government is a legal entity created by the state, and it is divided into two subdivisions called counties and municipalities. That's all for us today. In our next lesson, we will analyze the local government in terms of its power and scope.
Okay, so then what do you vote on locally? Because if it's broken down into a county and a municipality, do you vote on the municipality? Resident. In the US, what do you vote on at the local level? Do you vote for the person who controls the county? And do you get to vote on the person who controls the municipality that you live in? Controls the municipality. All right, let's see what it says. Yes, in the US, you vote for local officials at both the county level and the municipality level. Exactly who you vote for depends on your state and your community, but here's the general rule. At the local level, you vote for officials in two main governments. Most Americans live under both county and municipal governments. You usually vote in elections for each one, as long as you live inside their boundaries. All right. Do you vote for the person who runs the county? Yes. Counties have elected leaders, though titles vary by state. Common positions include county commissioners, county supervisors. Okay, that's just the list of people you elect, or different names for them. You vote for the person who runs a municipality you live in. Yes, if you live inside the boundaries of an incorporated municipality. Typical municipal level elected positions: mayor, city council, city clerk, local judges, school board members. Schools are run by a municipal district. So you vote for a lot in the municipal level. If you live inside a city, if you live in an unincorporated area, then you do not vote in county elections. You do vote in county elections. You do not vote in municipal elections because you're not in a municipality. So municipalities aren't everywhere. Other local things you often vote on: local ballot measures, school levies, changes to city charters, local referendums, sales taxes or property tax increases. Okay. How often do you have these elections? I'm going to guess every 2 years because that's how often you. Oh. They do it like the president. Most counties hold elections every 4 years, but not all offices are elected at the same time. Municipal government election. The municipal every 4 years. City or town council every 2 or 4 years. When did they happen? During statewide general election, in odd number years to avoid voter fatigue. spring elections for school boards and city council, special elections if there is a vacancy. Okay, so there's a lot of electing. A lot of electing. Where was my... I live... Municipal and county represented. Or representatives. Close enough. We'll see what it gets. We got to the end of this one, right? Yeah. Okay, local governments are creatures of the state. Unlike the federal-state relationship defined in the Constitution, local governments are created and regulated by state constitution and laws. They have no independent sovereignty powers. States can create, modify, or abolish them. County government structures. Counties, also called parishes. Certain places are primarily administrative divisions of the state. Key features include an elected board or commission that acts as a legislative body. Elected executive officers or officials like sheriff, county attorney / prosecutor, treasurer, clerk, assessor. Municipal government structures. These are incorporated areas with their own charter granted by the state. Common forms. Okay. Don't need to go into that. Key principles. Home rule. Some states give cities more autonomy via charters. Dillon's rule. In other states, cities only have powers explicitly granted by the state legislature. And the fact that local governments focus on police powers, protecting the health, safety, morals, and welfare of residents. Here's a clear breakdown of your local representatives if you live. Places you in Bakersfield in Kern County, California. Municipal city representative of Bakersfield. The city government is run by the Bakersfield City Council. Click on that. What does this give me? Nice looking place. Mayor Karen K. Goth, president over the city council and represents the whole city. Council members by ward. So then these are the people that are elected, right? The 7 wards, each with its own council member. Vice mayor. Your specific council member depends on your city ward. Ward 7. Man, Brett Cow. not even gonna try. However, official ward boundaries change and you can confirm exactly. County representative, Kern County. County level, your government is the Kern County Board of Supervisors, which governs county-wide services like elections, property rights, health, and sheriff department. Or Kern County Board of Supervisors. so these are the people that are elected. Can I see this? Climate. Hot. Got it. All right, let me see. You want Kern County, California. Let's just pull this up. Bakersfield. Oh, so it covers a huge area. Representatives. I want to find the representatives. Ugh. Oh, so easy to find when I looked up the district I lived in Canada. It's not gonna give it to me. That's not the person. Alright, well, I'm done trying to look. So the system seems very similar to the Canadian system. The local level having two different, the county and the municipality, like that's kind of combined to one, more or less, in Canada. Let me make sure of that. The US has a county and municipality system. How does that compare to the Canadian system? Oh, this isn't the one that's going to try to read it to me, is it? No, we're good. Both counties, both countries' local governments are creatures of the province or state. They have no independent constitutional powers and only exist because their higher level allows them to. Yep. The United States county first model. In most of the US, the county is the primary administrative arm of the state. Coverage almost every square inch of the US is part of a county. Dual nature, county serves as both a local government and regional branch of the state government. Okay, Canada's municipality first model. Canada relies more heavily on municipalities, cities, towns, townships. The gap, unlike the US, vast stretches of Canada, the northern wilderness, have no local government at all. They are managed directly by the province. The system changes wildly by province. For example, BC has regional districts, while Ontario has a mix of single tier, Toronto, and upper tier regional governments. Key structural difference. Sheriff. So the US has a county and then municipality system, and Canada just pushes it all into the municipality. All right. I've heard that provinces in Canada have more autonomy than states in the US. What is that autonomy? Because it sounds like, okay, let's just read what it says. You've hit on one of the greatest ironies of North American politics. The US started as a loose confederation and became highly centralized. Well, Canada started with a strong central vision and became one of the most decentralized federations in the world. While US states are powerful, Canadian provinces generally hold more exclusive sovereignty over their domestic affairs. Here is how that autonomy actually manifests. So is that like in the US, the whole federal government, their laws overwrite the laws of the state? Does that not happen in Canada? Let's see. Natural resources and the purse. In the US, the federal government owns about 28% of all land, controlling the mineral and oil rights on that land. Canada, the provinces own the natural resources. Under the Constitution Act, provinces have exclusive control over non-renewable natural resources and forestry resources. This means Alberta controls its oil sands, Quebec controls its massive hydroelectric exports, BC controls its timber. This gives provinces an independent revenue stream and leverage that US states often rely more heavily on federal grants with strings attached simply don't have. So US states, like this happens in Canada significantly too, where like the federal government provides the funding with strings attached essentially to the provinces. This is something that's done more heavily in the US. The states don't have as much control over their own resources, non-renewable natural resources. Healthcare and social policy. In the US, programs like Medicaid are joint federal state ventures. The federal government sets massive amounts of policy. Canada, healthcare is 100% provincial jurisdiction. While the federal government provides some funding, the Canadian Health Transfer, the provinces design the system, hire the doctors, and manage the hospital. This is why healthcare in Canada actually looks different in every province. There are 13 separate systems, usually tied together by a federal act. Oh. The Notwithstanding Clause, Section 33. This is the nuclear option of provincial autonomy that has no equivalent in the US. Under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, a province can pass a law that explicitly overrides certain constitutional rights, like freedom of expression or equal rights, for a 5-year period. Example, Quebec used it to pass Bill 21, which bans public servants from wearing religious symbols. I hear that that's still in the courts, because I've heard about that one recently. In the US, if a state law violates the Bill of Rights, the Supreme Court strikes it down, and that's the end of it. Canada, a province can say, we hear the court, but we're doing it anyway. And then the legal battles ensue. Okay. Immigration control. In the US, immigration is strictly a federal matter. States like Texas and California cannot legally choose who gets a green card. Canada, immigration is a shared power. Provincial nominee programs, provinces can specifically recruit and nominate immigrants based on their own economic needs. Manitoba needs more welders, so they fast track them. Quebec has its own separate immigration department and selects its own economic immigrants independently of the federal government. Oh. Separate immigration department. Direct versus indirect power. In the US, the federal government often uses the power of the taxing and spending clause to force states to behave. We will take away your highway funding if you don't raise the drinking age to 21. Canada, the courts have been much stricter about preventing the federal government from bullying provinces into areas of provincial jurisdiction. The Constitution says education is provincial. The federal government generally has to stay out of the way. Okay. That explained it to me a bit better. Alright, well, I think I'm gonna be ending this a little early today. I'm still trying to figure out how to upload videos to YouTube and how to edit them and all that. So I'm gonna have to work on that next. Great, well, thanks for watching. I'll probably go more into this, the US democracy next time. But I want to get into some more modern news soon. Great, well, thanks for watching. Have a good night. Stop all.